like it means nothing.
Hello everybody, you're too kind. My name is Mikael Wecksten, I'm a security lead at WarGames.
And my name is Svitlana Chaplinska, I'm security engineer at WarGames. Woohoo! So what's WarGames? WarGames is the Helsinki and Berlin-based company that does mobile games, and our most famous game out there is Merge Mansion.
Or that game that had Pedro Pascal in their ad, as it's more famously known as. So, why the title of our talk, WarGames? It's a movie from 1983, so some people know it. Yeah, that's nice.
We are old enough.
I'm not.
It starts off with an AI asking if we want to play a game. So, shall we play a game? What are we going to talk about? Security in gaming. It's just applications with technical components. We are not talking board games. We're not talking card games, even though they are interesting too. Mostly online games. Could we do this as a standard security one-on-one talk? With a fancy title, of course. Yeah, we could. Absolutely. The only thing is that the details are the difference between this industry and any other. But details are what matters. There are three main things that I tend at least to think about when it comes to gaming that sets it apart. It's the amount of data we have. It's quite large. It's the need for latency. Input, if you press a button, something should happen. Needs to happen quite fast with networking going back and forth. And lastly, fan base and community. I've never heard of a banking app that has a rabid fan base, but almost all games do. So, what industry are we talking about? Entertainment. It's bold, it's sexy, it's Comic Sans. It's passion-driven though, both from developer side and the people that play games. And that comes with both upsides and downsides.
So now we're in the world of games. And in order for you to play the game and for game to exist, we need to develop the game. And game can be developed in the teams, anything from one-person team, like in Stardew Valley, or it can be thousands of people, like in the World of Warcraft. And sometimes it feels like there are as many ways to develop games as there are companies who develop the games.
So we have everyone assembled, we have our different teams, we pick a game engine. If we build our own game engine, we're less a game company, more than a game engine company. That's a whole other talk. We look at our team, we decide the different tools, usually based on team size. We probably need some internal servers already from the get-go for certificates and handling stuff. This sounds like modern dev teams. It just looks slightly different. VS Code versus Unity. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same toolbox. It's a different color. It's a little different shape.
So now we come to security. So what actually security in games are? So whenever we talk about security, we talk about our CIA triad. And does it really work in the games? Let's look at the examples. So we have our loss of private information in the game. It's our confidentiality. We have our users not being able to play the game, and that's our availability. And we having accounts getting stolen or deleted, and that's our integrity. So it seems like it's the same type of puzzle, right?
Beyond that, it gets esoteric. It's a bit weird. Is cheating in games a security risk, like seeing through walls or teleporting around? Well, security could do it. Is this a quality assurance issue? Maybe testing. Well, when it comes down to it, someone should do it, right? No one likes having cheaters in the games. I tend to say exploiting software to make it do something tends to fall under hacking. And prevention of that tends to fall under security. But that doesn't mean that it is so clear-cut. But here today, we will also talk a little bit about cheating.
So now let's talk about security and different aspects of it when it comes to the game. And let's start with the development security. So as everywhere else, there are supply chain issues and there are supply chain attacks, and gaming is no different. We have our third-party packages, we have different components that might be vulnerable. And when it comes to the games, there are generally two ways how, as an adversary, you would approach it. You can use tools to attack the company. So for example, there was a case where Maya was infected and had an exploit, and that was a way to attack a software and the people who use it. And then there is another vector to it. You can use the game as a way to attack your players. And there was a case where Asset found a vulnerability, a supply chain attack in Asia when they had malware already packaged and signed in the game, and they was a way to attack your players.
So, supply chain attacks. Do we do anything different? Isn't that just the same usual thing? Yeah, more or less, but there are some caveats here as well. This is Ova's cheat sheet. If you haven't seen their security sheets, they are great. I put up the QR code as well. Some are agnostic. It looks at the patterns. It looks at the behaviors. You can use one tool everywhere. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have the context. But if you can't fingerprint a vulnerability or a malware, how can you find it by the fingerprint? If a CV never gets sent in, how can you actually avoid using it? It's kind of like, does a tree make a sound in the forest if a hacker isn't around exploiting it? So a community that works together and shares information is vital for a robust security. But that does not mean that we say, oh, our industry is so small. We don't have enough security people that look at it. We can't do anything. Building good habits is the foundation for almost anything. So we can still have our SBOM, or software bill of materials. We can have our processes and peer reviews and all this good stuff that makes the low-hanging fruit much more difficult to be exploited. One start, check out if you're doing what you should, and have some introspection, take some time. So what happens if we are breached? Because it happens, right? Even the best of us are gonna get breached sooner or later, as my old boss said. Rockstar had, it's a couple of years by now. It's 2 years because we're in 2025. They had their source code leaked. Not read up on the case, but the impact was IP loss, right? So they have reasons to try to attack us.
So how would we walk around this? What would we do in order to protect ourselves? And that's where our trusty defense in-depth strategy come into the game, or how we like to call it, an onion security. So we try to build as many layers of security as possible, so then each layer acts as a barrier. So it's much, much harder for an adversary to get any sensitive data or to reach the goal that they're trying to reach. Or another good example here could be, it's the same as when you try to peel the onion. It makes you cry as deep as you go. But when it comes back to either it's even worth it to attack the games. Are there any money in the gaming industry even? Would you try to ransom a gaming company and ask money from it?
You mean we just don't leak the source code? We want money as well?
So there are different models how gaming companies are monetizing their games, and they're very different. It's anything from you pay for the game and you own it forever. You have a subscription-based games. You have the games where you pay every other month and so on, so on. But there is the most of the money in.
Interesting fact, though, just this week, Steam went out and said any game on their PC platform that has ads that you're forced to watch are banned. So they have already closed off something that's very normal in mobile. Talking about big companies, though, EA. EA give our financial highlights every year, so we can look at how much money is in games. Their 2022 to 2023, they increased 500 million just for the live services. We can go 1 year back and look at 2021. They have something called FIFA Ultimate Team. It's basically the loot boxes for the FIFA series. They earned $1.6 billion from 1 year from one game on that. That's basically as much money they made from full games. Live services, loot boxes, huge amount of money. So, what should we do with the money that we don't get stolen?
So first, when we have our money, we need to pay our people who are developing the game, and then we probably will spend some money to run our servers. So let's talk about server security in a bit. So we have our team assembled, we have our game engine roaring, and our game is up and running. So then we have that one player does something, and if it's a multiplayer game, it should be reflected to all the others. And in some cases, it should be done in real time. And there is one very important detail here that makes it a bit more complicated, that the player's action should be legal. And it should be legal both by the rules of the game and by the game engine. And what makes it so tricky is that it was already mentioned that there is a lot of data. And that makes it hard. But what do we mean by a lot of data?
We can hammering home that it's a lot of data. Let's do some back of the napkin math, right? Counter-Strike 2, from the client side, how much data do we send and receive? It's around 50 to 100 kilobytes per second. They have, on average, on a good day, 1 million players. That's 50 to 100 gigabytes of data a second for you to take care of. That's just from the clients. Then we have the backends with the logs, behaviors, and anything else we can come up with. So as soon as we start talking about we should look for this pattern or we should do this cool thing, it might be that we need to have more data collected or handle logs of unimaginable magnitudes. The only one, the other kind of service that I can think of straight up is streaming. YouTube, Twitch, they have a lot of data as well. So it's not a unique gaming thing, but Twitch doesn't need to keep track of who gets the data or keep those logs around. They just send it and forget it. So it's this need to be able to handle the logs afterwards that sets it apart. And individually, it's easy, right? It's 50 to 100 kilobytes. I could do that with a Raspberry Pi. If I need 1 million Raspberry Pis, though, it gets a bit daunting.
Let's go and talk a bit about the server-side vulnerabilities, and in this specific case, about Minecraft. So it's very popular to host your own mods in the Minecraft. And mods are the user-created modifications to the game to enhance the gameplay or change some visuals. And there's the problem here. So mods are user-created and user-hosted. And that brings us opportunity that there might be some vulnerabilities in the mods.
But even if we have vulnerabilities, is anyone going to exploit it? Cool people like Svitlana that knows technology and can hack away, maybe she can. Can your everyday script kiddie in the basement? Well, there are projects out there. This is Mindgrief. It was written for a competition around malware. And it's self-replicating. It infects vulnerable servers. It looks for more servers. It looks for explicitly broken and vulnerable mods. It sets up a phishing in the server. So it starts phishing the players of that Minecraft server. It does all this, and it's out of the box, and you can just download it and go wild. And it's not in Minecraft. It's not Mojang that has any vulnerabilities for this. It's mods that might not be supported, or users that might not be updating them because they're having fun with their friends, not thinking about security posture. I know, when I was young, that's all I thought about, right? But not everyone does. And it's hard. It's a hard challenge from the company perspective to handle this, because you need to restrict freedom to protect players in this case. And is that something we should do? You could have your own third-party launcher and list and stuff like that, but freedom is really nice to have as well. But if we move away from self-hosted servers and we take those servers into our own, we have our own server, we're very cool, we do our security posture, we might have a security team. And let's assume we are perfect. We have no vulnerabilities. Is there still something that can happen to us? Of course. Every year, Xbox Live and PSN, every Christmas, a bunch of Grinches comes out and tries to DDoS them. Some years they actually manage to do it, some years not. Is this something we need to handle? Yes. Online games usually make their money from being online and having a strong fan base. We can get servers in like Cloudflare and similar to handle DDoS, unless we're a super huge company that have our own servers, and then it's yet another talk, more like 6 hours talk, but you know. What can we as smaller teams do? Well, we don't need to make it easier for the attacker. So know your environment, back to the bread and butter. What is your most expensive action that the player can take? If they send in a little package and your server go hog wild collecting megabytes of data every time, is that something an unauthenticated user should be able to do? Can you check if that is a okay thing to do, or if it is an attack? What's your logging situation on that? And this is just the basic stuff, right? Oh, sorry. PSN was down last week as well, but we don't know why yet, but 2 days.
So how we would walk around all of this? What are the ways to protect and defend yourself? So that's where our standard operating procedures come into play. So in the perfect world, nothing would be done on the day. So all of the actions would be automated, written down, and practiced. So when the bad day happens, all of the employees that should know where is that special Notion page is located, they know where it is, and they know exactly what to do. And having all of these processes practiced and automated give us a way in the time of an incident to have ability to quickly isolate our environment, to minimize the damage, and to collect an evidence. And as we mentioned already, probably 3 times at this point, that there is a lot of data. And that brings another challenge here, that retention of the logs that we have can be very short because there is a lot of data and we cannot store it forever. So even more, we need to act fast and know what to do when something happens. And when then something happens, we try our best with our preparation behind our back, that we ensure that our business is still running, we still make some money, the game is out there and we're happy. We collect our evidence. We ensure that our attack is fully stopped and there is no persistent left out there. And we talked about servers quite a lot, so where we run all of our logic and operations, but where are the games actually played? Who is the client for us? And in modern world, client can be anything. It can be your mobile phone, your laptop, your fridge, if you have a smart fridge. Maybe your smart home can also play some games, whatever. Anything that has some operational logic in it can be your client for playing games. And sometimes those games go a bit outside from the online world, and they cross into the unknown of the offline. So when the Pokemon Go became widely popular, and what so different was about them was that they crossed this little bridge of the online and offline. So people started walking around with their phones, trying to look for their precious Pokemon. And that introduces a new risks for the game developers, because did you ever think why there was no much interaction in the Pokemon Go? Why wouldn't that be a cool community that they would come together and decide whose Pokemon this is? Because not all of the people are nice people, and when you give someone an ability to just physically take something from someone, sooner or later, unfortunately, they might do it, and we as a game developers should be mindful about it. And that's our side of this physical security risk to all of this.
And the virtual have always kind of crossed over into meat space. It's not the first with Pokemon Go. Maple's story, many, many years back now, had an incident where a wife in Japan divorced her husband, and they were married in the game as well as outside of it, and then deleted his account. That's actually quite a lot of money. I have personal friends that have had schoolyard fights and bloodied noses over the game Tibia. These things have always happened, and they will continue to happen. But when we start talking about mobile games or wearable games, we need to be very mindful how strangers might interact. So, we have our client and the people behind it. Let's talk about the technical client security. A client basically just presents the player info in the best case. It takes input, sends it to the server decides something, it sends it back, it gets presented. We're done. But the server can't do everything. It needs to be balanced. Otherwise, that cost starts to rise again. And we can't really trust the client, because it's not our machine, it's our player's machine.
And when it comes to the trust, sometimes it's very hard to draw the line, what should be server side of things, what should be client side of things. And let's talk about this very interesting example of the new world and all of the vulnerabilities that were introduced to the new broken world when it was released. So when New World was released, players very quickly started noticing that there are a lot of very interesting features in the game that game developers probably didn't intend the gameplay to look like this. There were a lot of ways for you to become invisible, and if you know how to become invisible by just dragging your window around because there is a small technical gap, you would never die, and that's pretty cool. I would like to not die as well, maybe. There was another vulnerability that when you trade an item in the game, there is one item that already exists, it gets copied, and then the old item gets deleted. And players realized that if you close your client window fast enough, your old item is never deleted. So you've got your instant money glitch. You're rich, you cannot die, you can just live forever and never worry about anything. And as a cherry on top, they even left a little access in the chat. So that's interesting, right?
It's amazing. Josh Drive Hayes is a YouTuber, a very good-looking man and very soothing voice. He has an excellent series of videos about the New World. If you're interested to see in detail about the vulnerabilities and the discussion around them, he's the one to go to. I'll give you a second. I see some phones.
Now.
Yeah, no. So, we have more client vulnerabilities, of course. In Dark Souls 3, we had quite a big one some years ago. It's a remote code execution. The researcher that found the vulnerability, according to him, found it, sent it into From Software, and was ignored. He started exploiting it towards streamers to make a splash to get people to notice it. And if this one had come out today, it would be kind of interesting, actually, because we have seen a rise of VTubers. It's digital puppeteering, basically. They hide their face and their identity. They stream with a digital avatar. If you could RC their computer, you could start a webcam and show the world how they look. That would be kind of sucky if you're trying to hide yourself. There also was a downside from software side is that it was kind of obvious they didn't have a SOP in place, a standard operating procedure, because they didn't react. They didn't take this seriously. It took them quite a while before they started shutting down the servers. And this is another problem of this, because shutting down the servers has an impact as well on the enjoyment of the game. So should we always do it, even when it's a small vulnerability? In Dark Souls' case, it was built around this interaction in mind. You were meant to invade each other's world and interact with other players. And removing that feels a bit hollow, really.
So what would we do around this? So first thing that comes into your mind is a good design. So if you do your threat modeling before developing anything, if you think through all of the technical and player-related features, that's probably the best way to do it, right? We need to think always who is allowed to make a decision and where the decision needs to be made. Is this the client that makes a decision and sends this to the server? Or is this a server that is the big brain of everything and decides everything and then sends to the client? And that's a big and a good question to decide all of this. But when it comes to already like in the Dark Souls case, the biggest question is, why wouldn't you just fix it, right? Just do a good design and follow best security strategies. But the biggest problem is that there is always cost somewhere. So it's some technical decisions that needs to be done. Sometimes it's just hard to unbreak something that is already broken. And in case with the Dark Souls, they put their servers down the moment they realized that there is a very big vulnerability that does affect the core of their game, and their servers were down for 7 months. And that's the time that it takes to fix it. So it's easy to point the finger, but then it's very hard to actually do it, because when it's broken and it's core, there is time, and there is money, and there is a poor people that work on fixing it. So it's easy for us to just say what to do to follow good design, but at the end of the day, there is always cost in something. And whenever we do talks like this, they are very general and all around the place. And if we don't talk about some very specific problem that we faced in the very specific architecture that we have, this will be a bit detached from reality. And even if we talk about this very specific case, it still will be the issue that was specific to the architecture that was ours, for example. And when we talk about trying to detect this type of problems, there is always a cost down the tunnel.
So let's talk about detection and the cost that comes with that. Cost of retention. Data in, handling it in real time, querying it. We're gonna get false positives. There is a lot of costs around this, and they affect business, player, the game itself. So we might say, let's try to cut down on this. Let's try to cut down on cheating. We offload it to an anti-cheat, because we can't trust the client, but we can make sure, or try to make sure, the client isn't cheating, and build a trust zone. The platform is not ours, so it's difficult. It's very invasive. This needs to be quite low level with a lot of privilege. It's a cat and rat kind of game. You do something, the cheat engineers do something to fix it. There's a talk about this tomorrow in here at 19 called Sons from the Basement, Extreme Low-Level Game Cheating by Diego and Jussi. If you want a deeper look into the problems around that, I encourage you to go to that. But in the end, let's say we want anti-cheat. Is that our decision to make?
And the players are not in the room when the decisions are made. And that's solely on our shoulders of the game developers to make that decision, and to make that decision also favorable to the players that we have.
What can players lose besides their computer, their privacy, and their money, apparently? Well, accounts. Accounts can have a lot of different value. It can be sentimental. I lost my World of Warcraft account some years back. I had 15 years on that. Not the funnest thing, but I'm not too bothered by it. There can also be that they don't need to steal your account. You can start harvesting and making accounts to sell them as well. The calculation in the end is always amount of work versus potential profit. And a lot of cool Counter-Strike 2 accounts can have quite a lot of money. So how would we steal that? Or maybe a Final Fantasy 14 account?
So it all goes down to phishing, as always. There are phishing that every one of us seen, and gaming industry is not different. And here we have example from the Final Fantasy 14. So there was a recent phishing campaign where adversaries changed a lowercase l in final to the uppercase I. And I cannot see either it's L or I even with my glasses on. So it's very trivial, it's very easy. It's been common in the past and will be still present in the future. So what would we do about it?
Yeah, how do we detect and defend them against phishing and maybe even abusive chat? This is a natural language problem most often. So we need to lean into automation. We can't throw people at this. They're going to burn out. Burnout in security is already a huge issue. We need to keep false positives in mind. If we just ban people that send a URL, we will run out of players in a while. We can check what domains are bought and sold and kind of preemptive ban some that we might think, but it gets complicated very fast as soon as reality hits. So you usually take a bit of everything. You take people sending in reports, you take in URLs that look iffy, and you weigh them, and if that goes under a certain score, it goes to a person that can look at it. Can we use MMLs, LLMs, large language models ourselves as well? Because this is just going to scale up. You can have social engineering as a service now. Sure, we can, but just as logging is an attack vector already, LLMs is also going to be. So it's no easy solution to this. It's just hard work.
And all of these attacks shouldn't be even very complicated. So when it comes to social engineering, something like press Alt F4 would double your gold. It's also an attack vector, because then the user will exit the game and you have their items or the money. And that's one way to look at it, right? And if we think about it, how many players actually have their security processes in place? Did they rehearse their standard operating procedures? Are they documented? Do they have disaster recovery in place? Probably, maybe, I don't know.
Well, for a lot of my friends and family, I am that process. I get calls at all times of the day, and people say, this has happened, can you help me? Will this work? Will I give out my number to everyone here and you just call me if something happens? I like to sleep sometimes as well. I had a friend a very handsome, intelligent, cool friend. He likes me, so he has to be. He got phished on Steam for Counter-Strike 2 items. It was a very believable thing. He got a message from someone he used to play with, and he didn't think about it. It's about voting. He went into the browser. All these things kind of compound, and it can get you. They do this full time, and as LMMs get more advanced, it's going to be harder to prevent it. So can we do something else? Can we defend our players? It's difficult to communicate how important it is, believe me. How do you tell a child or a teenager that their account is very important when their identifying trait as a kid is that they have no sense of consequences? Well, you basically can't. That's parents' whole job. It's difficult to be one. But the impact can be huge. It's not only tears and a lot of fear and bad times. It can also be every birthday gift and Christmas gift they have gotten for the past 8 years that just disappears. We could force them, but if you try to force a kid to do anything, you know how well that tends to work out. So can we give them a carrot of some sort?
I think we can give them a couple of carrots so they can make a carrot cake out of it. So the best way we think is to bring security for the players in the game is to gamify security. So we want to make it seamless and useful for the players as well. So very cool example here is from the World of Warcraft. So there, if you have your multi-factor authentication on, and as long as you have it active, you will get more backspace and that very cutie core pop as a gift for you. And that's cool. That's a built-in security feature that benefits players in two ways. They have their security increased, and they have something cool in the game, and they won't even think about it. They would do it because they want that cool little something as a gift for them. And the same we can do in mobile games, for example. So you can do everything to have your players to back up their data. So you will try to give them motivation to make an account, so if anything happens or they transfer their accounts between the devices, they have their backup existing. So you can do the same, just give your players an ability. If you create an account, you get your premium currency or a bigger storage in the back. And that's easy, that's cool, that's already security by design, and cool gamified security. So when we talk about security in gaming and attacks in gaming, there are a lot of different attack vectors, and each slide of this presentation can be a presentation on its own because those are very deep and different topics. And when we think about the games and the attacks around them, the game can be a channel of the attack. The game can be the goal. The company around the game can be the goal, and the players or community around it can be the goal as well.
So, WarGames, why did we choose that movie for this? Well, it is a strange game. The only winning move is not to play. And that's true. It's true for everything we do in life. We accept risk to do something fun. And sometimes that's not going to play out in our favor. But that doesn't mean that it's irresponsible. We just need to take that responsibility seriously.
So let's protect the games, protect the players, and the industry we love. Thank you so much, and if you would have any questions, we will be out there ready for them, or you can then find me at the HealthSec Glitter booth later today. Thank you so much.